MrBeast has not been sharing the full truth about Feastables, so we took it upon ourselves to deep dive and find what's really going on behind the scenes.
It's been a long 15 hours.
Jimmy Donaldson, also known as MrBeast, started his YouTube channel over 10 years ago, and since then, he's turned it into the biggest personality-driven YouTube channel with over 250 million subscribers and one of the widest reaches of any celebrity in the world. His videos regularly draw in more than 150 million views, with his most watched, the real-life recreation of Squid Games, passing over the 500 million mark. With so many views, he makes millions from ads and sponsors on his channel. So why has he started a chocolate brand? I took a closer look at the brand to find out the real story behind the scenes and to show you how the brand works and what MrBeast has put together. Jimmy started Feastables for several reasons, one of the big ones being to be able to monetize his channel. With a channel his size, he can either take sponsor money, a lump sum from a company like Shopify or Stumble Guys or Acorns that will pay him money to promote their products. This approach works well for most creators, but Jimmy noticed a big drawback. He was using his audience to promote other businesses. He thought, why not just create his own business to promote? This way he not only drives himself business, but he also builds equity, the value of his ownership in the company. Also, by promoting his own products, it feels less like an advertisement in the middle of his videos and more like a natural endorsement. Additionally, Jimmy started to realize that creating his own product to promote was becoming necessary, not just a preference. See, as MrBeast grew into a channel averaging 150 million views a video, there are only so many sponsors that can pay that kind of money, and that also have the broad general audience targeting that makes sense for that. What I mean by that is, first, their marketing budget. One Super Bowl ad costs $7 million. His most viewed videos are the equivalent viewership of over 2 Super Bowls. It's hard to find an estimate for how much Jimmy charges, as he prefers to do more long-term partnerships, but we're talking about millions of dollars per video. There's only so many companies with that marketing budget. And second, even if a company did have the marketing budget, MrBeast's content is not niched down, and he has a general broad audience. The company would need to have a product that appeals to the masses rather than just a subset, otherwise they'd be better off running targeted ads elsewhere. So with so few sponsors able to pay the big dollars, and Jimmy's desire to build ownership of a company, he thought to answer a couple questions. Number one, what is something that I can create that would have a broad market appeal to my audience? And number two, what is something that I'm actually able to create and create a better version of what currently exists? And number three, heavy emphasis on creating a better version and having control. Jimmy learned a hard lesson after licensing his name for MrBeast Burgers. He had no control over the quality and the standards, and a lot of restaurants or ghost kitchens were making subpar food with his name on it, and there was nothing he could do about it. After a lot of thinking, he decided on chocolate. Chocolate works for several reasons. It has mass market appeal and specifically appeal to MrBeast's younger demographic, and it's also something that kids could afford. He also thought he could create something that was better than was currently on the market. You could say that the big chocolate makers like Hershey's had got a bit complacent with their market domination, and ever since then, they've been playing a bit of catch up. But here's the big thing. MrBeast did not want this to be like other YouTuber brands, just sold online and only purchased due to their love of him, not because they actually liked the product. He knew that for a lot of people, they would first try the product because of their love for MrBeast, but he hoped that the product would be good enough for people to keep coming back regardless of his involvement. So he recruited the former president of RX Bar, which is a healthy protein bar which had a very successful run, to take the role of CEO of the company to bring some needed industry experience. See, creating a product is easy enough to break into. The struggle comes with things like getting store space, which for a new brand is a challenge. That's where the RX Bar president's experience really came to help. Now let's take a step back and look at what Jimmy created and answer what are Feastable bars. Now, Feastable chocolate bars are priced at around $3 each, positioning them between premium and average market offerings. This pricing strategy places them more affordably compared to some organic chocolate brands, but more expensive than conventional options like Hershey's. At launch, Feastables offered 3 flavors of bars: original, almond, and Kiwant Crunch, and soon expanded to a couple of other flavors. They also prided themselves on only using a few ingredients in each chocolate bar, as to remove all these preservatives and chemicals that are so common in the chocolate industry. From there, Jimmy worked on his distribution strategy, and his strategy is unique because it starts with creating excitement on YouTube. Jimmy integrated the product launch into his content, such as featuring it in the world's most dangerous escape room video, where it was seamlessly woven into the narrative without seeming like an advertisement. The authentic integration helped maintain viewer engagement, and on launch, the YouTube launch video garnered over 31 million views, and the associated social media posts also saw a ton of interaction, and these show the power of creating a well-engaged audience. MrBeast also ran a chocolate contest with over $1 million in prizes, including 10 grand prize winners who would receive a golden ticket in their chocolate bar with a chance to compete for a chocolate factory in a future video, a reference to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. These measures built him up a ton of grassroots support to get the product off the ground. Now, taking a look at the initial results, one of the big things that enabled their success was their Walmart partnership. Now, this was an important strategic relationship, as Walmart is the biggest retailer retailer in the US, so it's a massive partnership to have. It allows for access to the product for most of the US, and it also shows to the smaller retailers that the big one is already on board. It also allows a great test sample size, and having this right off the bat is massive. I wouldn't be surprised if the CEO was the one to thank for opening these doors. MrBeast continued to leverage his fan base to get into more doors. He often encourages fans, if they weren't at their local Walmart or eventually other stores, to request that they stock them via phone, via email, and customer service stations. Having this massive army willing to help him like this and show the stores the potential demand was tremendous in terms of getting shelf space at a lot of retailers and expanding so quickly. I mean, 250 subscribers can go a long way. And also subscribe to help get me there. In the first 90 days of its release, 4 million Feastable bars were sold. And in the first year, Feastables generated over 250 million in retail sales. Feastables is a private company, so we can't see profit data, but 250 million in revenue is a pretty large number we're looking at for a first year. He also created a Super Bowl ad that he eventually decided to save money by not running, which is funny given how much he spends on his YouTube videos. But the video made its circulation on social media nonetheless, which is just the power of his name. And a small incident happened with a company arguing brand infringement. After legal discussion with the company D's Nuts, it was agreed that MrBeast could no longer use the name D's Nuts on his product, and he had to discontinue the line. Got him! This ended up being just a small bump in the road. MrBeast continued to call out Feastables and reference them in his videos, keeping the idea fresh in his audience's head, even tying the Feastables brand in his sponsorship spots with Shopify in a 2-for-1. And in October 2023, MrBeast announced that Feastables had teamed up with the Charlotte Hornets to debut a new logo and become their official jersey patch sponsor for the 2023 NBA season, a pretty big stamp of credibility. Other patches include PayPal and Disney, so this really makes them look like a pretty legit brand. Now, in mid-2023, MrBeast discovered that a lot of the products were displayed poorly in Walmart, so he took to Twitter to request that his fans get to work and helping display them properly across the country. And this move drew a lot of controversy, but it's one of the great powers and advantages that MrBeast has. He has a gigantic army of fans that he can tap into anytime. Now, the move was controversial because a lot of people claimed it was disturbing minimum wage Walmart workers in their job was something so trivial. But the practice of having employees come through to check on displays is very normal in the retail industry, and lots of businesses hire someone in regions to double check and make sure things are displayed correctly. And I think this just goes to show the lack of understanding of the people getting mad. MrBeast was able to get what would usually be a paid job for many of these brands for free through his fans. Now, bringing us into the new year, MrBeast said that one of his 3 big goals for 2024 was selling chocolate. And as he stepped back and took analysis, he realized that he'd fallen into the same pit as before. He was doing a lot of the right things, but he was still selling a mediocre product. It's so much easier to build a business on a product that speaks for itself than something that's not so good and you gotta fight against. So he went back to the drawing board to make improvements. And in order to understand what he did, it's important we get a bit of an overview of the chocolate industry as a whole. The global chocolate market is dominated by a few major corporations, namely Mars, Mondelez, Nestle, and the Hershey Company. These companies collectively hold a significant share of the market, influencing pricing, production, and marketing strategies globally. And this means for a long time, it's been extremely hard to break into. Jimmy is going up against some serious players. Mars is one of the leading chocolate manufacturers, known for brands such as M&M's, Snickers, and Twix. They reported over 40 billion in annual revenue. Nestle has a more broad portfolio, but it also includes brands like Kit Kat and Crunch, and they're a significant player in the chocolate industry. Nestle does a whole lot more than just candy. They've done nearly $90 billion in revenue in recent years. And then Hershey is a major force in North America, holding about 44% of the US chocolate market. Hershey reported revenues of around $8 billion annually. Compared to these guys, Feastables is still a tiny player, but they have strong momentum, and for a 2-year brand, they're making some real progress. Now, the chocolate industry has faced significant criticism and scrutiny for child labor and exploitation in its supply chains, which are particularly in West Africa. They account for about 70% of the world's cocoa production. Now, recently, major companies have been a part of initiatives like the Harkin-Engel Protocol, aiming to reduce child labor. But despite these efforts, reports suggest that child labor still exists and is still prevalent in many areas due to a lot of factors. In 2014, global chocolate sales reached $100 billion, yet cocoa farmers in Africa often live on less than $1.25 per day. This big economic disparity is maintained by keeping cocoa prices low, which forces farmers to seek cheaper labor solutions, including still using child labor. There's been some evidence that major chocolate companies work together to set the price for cocoa beans, effectively acting like a cartel. Now, this arrangement holds down the price farmers receive for cocoa beans, maximizing profits for chocolate manufacturers, but impoverishes the growers. Again, this is not confirmed fact, although it is said by many outside viewers. viewers. Most large chocolate companies do not buy directly from cocoa farmers, but through middlemen, allowing them to claim plausible deniability regarding the working conditions on the farms. This complex supply chain makes it difficult to enforce the ethical labor practices. Now, MrBeast does not want to get riled up in controversy involving these things, but it can be hard given the chocolate supply chain as a whole. MrBeast is up against quite a lot, but he's still managing to somehow find a way, and a lot of this involves him building a supply chain of his own. In order to improve the chocolate, Jimmy realized that the claim that the bar is better than Hershey really isn't enough.
It tastes better than a Hershey's bar.
Although Hershey has marketed itself and positioned itself as the #1 chocolate in America, isn't really appreciated for its taste. Jimmy spent a lot of work testing, improving, and tweaking the bar to get a final taste that was great, including conducting several studies and focus groups. Now, several others have taken a deep dive onto these studies and focus groups and claim that Jimmy and his team used psychological tricks to get participants to select his bar over Hershey's and the other bars. Now, I won't make a definitive conclusion here, but as far as industry studies go, that's generally standard practice. Similar to how 4 to every 5 dentists recommend Trident gum, or a medicine saying it's the #1 doctor recommended brand. The general conclusion does seem to be that the new bar is a whole lot better. It also came out with brand new packaging to align with the big change. It features bright blue colors that really stand out. This is a trick a lot of recent brands have employed, including Bang Energy. They use bright colors to really stand out and grab attention on store shelves, and many accuse their marketing of overly targeting kids in this manner. But it works because it really does stand out in a world where most packaging is bland. Hershey even reacted with a bar of their own. Now, do you think Hershey's is copying MrBeast's style? Comment what you think below. Another thing that Jimmy sought to work out with the big relaunch was the supply chain logistics. Many stores have been sold out for extended periods of time due to the demand that Feastables received. Now, the first part of the equation was getting retailers to trust it. Retailers at first were unsure of taking the gamble on investing in lots of inventory until they knew the product would sell. Now that they've seen it sell out like this, they're willing to give more of a chance to Jimmy and restock it. The second part is the supply chain as a whole, as we discussed.
And so the problem we're running into is it just takes time to build up the supply chain and get Feastables in Southeast Asia.
As Jimmy says, building a chocolate supply chain takes time, especially when a few industry players control so much of it. While it's pretty easy to get access to some supply of chocolate, as there's plenty of smaller chocolate brands out there, when the quantity starts increasing, it gets harder and harder to do, and eventually gets to the point where Jimmy has to build out the whole supply chain himself. He's also spoken about expanding Feastables globally to India, to Mexico, and beyond.
Feastables in India, get Feastables in Brazil and Mexico and all these other places where we have giant pockets of our audience.
MrBeast is an international brand thanks to his work in translating his videos into 12+ additional languages, and because of this, he can capitalize on a global audience for his Feastable product. The problem is that building out a global supply chain takes even more time than building out a domestic one, but Jimmy does seem to be building out the team in order to reach these goals, and even has jobs posted on his website directly related to growing their supply chain operations. The default choice for a lot of brands is to partner with a distributor who can handle a lot of this for them. However, Jimmy wants to retain as much ownership and control as possible, which is why he's trying to build this out himself, which does allow for more ownership and control, just takes more time. Right now, Feastables is only available in the United States, Canada, and a select other few countries, and MrBeast has expressed his concern as he spends so much of his time talking about Feastables when the majority of his audience can't even purchase them yet. For the day of the relaunch, MrBeast again went with a big video announcement. With his reach, this is all he needs to do to get hundreds of new articles and YouTube videos like this one talking about it. He also dropped the MrBeast bar from the name of the product, and this goes back to what we discussed earlier, his desire to make this a product that's not directly tied to him. So far, the reception of the bar has been a big improvement over the last one, and the new launch seems to have had just as big of an impact as the first. As mentioned, when MrBeast does something like this, it sends a shockwave to hundreds if not thousands of creators who start making videos on it too, and it reaches more than just his massive audience. Now, Jimmy has just relaunched his new chocolate brand and says he's dedicating 2024 to building this as big as possible, but where does this bring us from here? What is happening next? The first one is expansion into other products. Now, he's already released other products like MrBeast cookies and Carl gummies before, but MrBeast has expressed desire to keep expanding into more product categories. And he's also said his mission for the company is eventually work to make these foods healthier by removing the chemicals and preservatives usually found while maintaining the taste. The maintaining the taste is super important. Jimmy is also taking a reinvestment model approach with Feastables. This is similar to what Jeff Bezos did with Amazon and a lot of other big tech companies have done. Reinvest the profits into more growth and expansion. Currently, Feastables has 95 employees. space. And he has a big source of revenue too through his channel. And although a lot of that money is reinvested into the videos on the channel, there's still plenty of money to reinvest in the Feastables brand and grow it even bigger. With Feastables, MrBeast is doing something that has not been done before in the CPG space, something that has not even been done before on the influencer space. Sure, there's Ryan Trahan's Joyride, there's Chamberlain Coffee, and a whole host of others, but Feastables is on a whole nother level, and it only seems to be going up from here.